I think that we're live now. So I'm going to just talk as if we are live. We have nobody in the Zoom meeting at the moment. Yara has disappeared. Anyway, hello peeps. Welcome to Parkour Theory in Dihala. This week we have, I'm going to quickly take my camera away so that people can actually see him. We have Herr Robin, der Coach. Robin the Coach, hello, how are you?
Pretty good, how are you?
I am hungry but happy to be here. We are here to essentially, for those who haven't seen us do this before, I've just found this random link. We are here to chat about things all to do with parkour and just kind of explore a little bit about who Robin is, what he does, and what are his thoughts on generally everything. To be fair, this is actually just a kind of extension of what Robin and I occasionally do anyway, which is just phone each other up and hello, Sarah. And basically, Robin is just very kindly listening to most of me chat rubbish. And so I want to kind of give that back to him and give a chance for him to say to everyone what it is he does. So before we start, I'm going to quickly take again myself off of this. And I want to ask Robin, hey, how are you? And B, could you give us a quick rundown very shortly of who you are and what you do?
Yes, so as I said, I'm pretty good. My name's Robin Link. I'm better known under my Instagram handle, which is Robin the Coach now. 25 years old. I'm a parkour practitioner and coach. I've been teaching for the last 8 years on and off, and right now I'm studying sports science in Germany, Freiburg. I've done lots of other things and lots of traveling. And it's my goal to coach parkour culture in a way to a little bit more organized training, especially when it comes to strength and conditioning, because I'm also a personal trainer. And that's just my personal mission in this world culture that we have.
Nice. Something else that we're trying to do in this interview is we're going to try and switch between German and English. Now, Robin and I had a chat about this, about if it will work or not. But we're going to try. The way that we're going to do it, just so that people at home kind of have an idea of it, is one of us might speak a little bit in German, and then the other person will basically just try and hit the points that he said in the alternative language. So let's see how this works. If it doesn't work, then we'll just scrap it. But if it does work, I think it would be quite an interesting tool to have discussions that will include more than just English-speaking people. So, zum Anfang, du hast gesagt, dass du hast in Australia gewohnt. Oder nicht gewohnt, aber wie lange war du in Australia?
1 Jahr.
1 Jahr, so 1 year. Und wo war du in Australia zum Beispiel? Oder hast du...
Ich bin ein bisschen rumgereist. Ich war größtenteils in Melbourne. Also ich glaube, ich war 8 von 12 Monaten, 9 von 12 Monaten in Melbourne. Ich war ein bisschen in Adelaide, ganz kurz in Tasmanien, auf der Great Ocean Road, aber ich habe eigentlich in Melbourne gewohnt.
So mainly in Melbourne, cool. When I was there, I was mainly in Perth, which is like, Australia's like massive, and then Perth is this tiny little island. That's it.
Like what, 14 hours away.
Ja, right, ehrlich, du könntest 5 Stunden mit Flugzeug fahren und du bist noch in die gleiches Land. Yeah. If you fly that far in Europe, you've traveled 5 or 6 different cultures. Cool, so was ich wollte kurz fragen ist das, warum war du in Australia? Why were you in Australia?
Nachdem ich Psychologie studiert habe, wusste ich nicht so genau, was ich machen will. Und ich war schon immer gerne auf Reisen, total viel auch während dem Studium. Damals ganz viel in Asien und ganz viel in Europa. Und Australien hat mich immer interessiert und ich wollte gerne länger dorthin. Und das habe ich dann einfach gemacht. Und war 1 Jahr lang viel Barkeeper habe ich gearbeitet, aber auch eben im Parkour und immer mehr gemerkt, wie viel wichtiger mir das ist, auch Parkour zu machen, auch beruflich. Und ja, letztendlich habe ich dann kurz nachdem ich zurückkam entschieden, dass ich nichts anderes mehr machen will.
Und welches Jahr, what year was that?
2018 to 19. And then...
So 18 to, were you also, so essentially you're on a kind of like working visa? Essentially,
yeah, exactly.
Just come. Is that part of the? Oh, one thing you haven't said, and I'd like to. How do I put this? I'd like to clarify it because I have it slightly in my head. You are half English, half German. Is that correct? Nice. Where can I just ask, just sort of general
Yeah.
nosiness, where's your English side from?
My dad's from Kent,
Kent. Okay, and your mum is from
Germany.
Whereabouts in Germany? You
Central
don't.
Germany, close to Frankfurt, pretty much.
Nice. I'm just nosy. I just like that kind of chat, to be honest. I
Yeah,
just
man.
like to know where everyone's from. So, ja, du war in Australien für 1 Jahr und einfach arbeiten. Und hattest du mit die Parkour-Community da getroffen
Ja,
oder
viel.
gelernt? Ja, ja.
Klar,
Who
also
who was there at the time?
the Melbourne Parkour guys who still run workshops every Sunday, still, I think up to this day. Mostly like some, what's their name? The team from Melbourne, the Fraser does the vids, something, Owls Gang. So I met many of them.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Quite a few people. Reese as well. I think you probably know him too. Ginger guy from Melbourne. Used to live in England.
I'll be honest with you, actually, there's a few, because I was mainly based in Perth, I was only in Melbourne for, replace spotlight. Suddenly you all see my face. I was only in Melbourne for like genuinely only a couple of days when I was there, because I lived in Perth and then my family was in Sydney and we went to Melbourne for a music festival, Falls Fest on New Year's Day. And New Year's Day is also my birthday. So we were only in the city of Melbourne for like a day. It was a really cool city. Like when I was there, it was some really interesting architecture, but like that was the one city I didn't actually see. I even managed to get to Adelaide and stuff, and not Melbourne really.
Yeah, I used to connect with Adelaide community a lot better actually, because they've got the gym. Melbourne doesn't have a gym anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
sure. So hold on, just as a bit of a shout out. So you know, like Travis and stuff.
Yeah, of course, man.
Yes. So can you tell a story about how you met Travis? Because I can just tell this story about Travis, because I feel like he's somebody who's done a lot of work in his local community and the outside world don't really know him.
He's done loads of work, yes. So I think when I came to Adelaide, I wanted to check out, I wanted to do parkour, or I want to do that wherever I go really. So I think I just Google like Adelaide parkour, and so the first thing you'll find is Point A, which is their movement gym, right in the city centre. And as it turns out, I was staying with a friend, and it was literally 200 meters from where he lived. Way. It was literally down the road. It was literally like you step out the door, there it is. And I walked past, and I think I just aimlessly wandered in because it was open anyway. And some people like doing flips or something. And Harry Sutton, I don't know if you know him. Like
Harry Sutton. Yeah. I know Harry Sutton, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I met him first, actually. And he was like, "Oh, come in, what will you do?" And I told him about myself and about my coaching history and everything. And he was like, "I think we have a job for you." I didn't even ask for one, but he was just like, "I think we have a job for you here. And you should really talk to TJ." And I went, "Sweet, let's do it." And then I think I met him the day after or so. And then I just basically spend all my free time, or all my time, at Point A.
Yeah.
Either running workshops or mostly training.
Yeah.
Myself.
And Point A is a quite interesting space. Like it's for me, how do I put this? I think it's one of those spaces where it's very versatile. Like most parkour gyms, if I'm honest, I don't think that you can kind of make a gym that's purely just parkour. I think you can in some ways, but I think for me, a lot of the ways that these places make more money in order to survive is being quite a kind of hub of many different communities. So I know that when I was there, I'll talk a little bit when I was there in a sec, but I know when I was there was also like fire spinning going on and a lot of other communities. Was that still happening when you were there?
Yeah. Fire spinning is huge there. I think fighting as well. They had general fitness classes and stuff. So we had all the calisthenics people there. It was just like an open movement space, really. It wasn't. I didn't even perceive it as a pure parkour space, and I think it was never declared as one.
Yeah, no, for sure. When I was there, I'm just going to chat a little bit about when I was there, because I went to Australia when I was a fresh-faced babe. essentially just basically I was like 17. And I just came out of school and I was like, I definitely don't want to go to uni yet because I've got no idea what I want to study in uni. But I wanted some time away. So I went over to Australia originally to be a theatre teacher. Theatre, because that's what I wanted to do when I was younger. That was like my main thing. But yeah, when I was at point A, essentially like this is kind of how I traveled Australia. Is essentially I obviously in Perth I had a job and in Sydney I had a family, but I wanted to really travel. And I messaged, I just went online, found Adelaide Parkour and messaged the first person I saw, which was Travis. And I was like, hey, I'm this like 17-year-old dude. I think I was 18 at the time. I just turned 18. Can I come and stay? And he was feeling like, yeah, man, no worries. I've got a bed and stuff at my parents' place. You can stay there. That's fine, right? So I turned up and he literally like, he arrived and he took me into what I assume is his parents' house. Or I think he lived there at the time as well, but his parents' house, and gave me this bed and then turned to me and went, right, I'm off. I'm off to stay with my girlfriend. So I was just kind of like by myself in Travis's house because that was the only place that there was a place. So I was having like tea and dinner and stuff with his mum. I think my memory of that time was quite a while ago now, but he is somebody that really is a community. I don't necessarily even say leader because I'm sure knowing him, he might not necessarily like that term necessarily, but he was somebody that really went out of his way, and he was told went out of his way to help the community at large, especially travelers, people who are from the community going into it. But also shout out to Travis because I was told that I wasn't the only one. In a way, do you know what I mean? He's always got people coming in, and his family was so accommodating. And as I said, just for me to be this random Scottish kid to turn up on the door and be like, hey, can I stay for like 4 days till my family arrive? Yeah, man, I think that was, for me, that was, as much as it seemed kind of normal then, when I look at how us as a community operate, there aren't that many communities where somebody will literally, a random person will message you and be like, hey, can I stay with you? And your first reaction is, yes, I'll get a place at my parents' house. Do you know what I mean?
True.
That's all I have to
heard
say.
old school skaters do that too, but
yeah, for sure. I just think it's
skater myself. I can only rely on what people tell me. So.
it wouldn't be too much of what's it called, a jump to think that happens in other communities. Do you know what I mean? I do believe that it happens in other communities, but it was all I'm saying is it's definitely something that I really appreciated with Travis. And I remember actually when I was there, they hadn't got any like point A t-shirts yet, so we were just doing like fake ones. So we made a stencil of the point A, and we'd go out and spray it on a t-shirt. And actually somewhere in my house, I think it's actually still back in Scotland, but I've still got my point A t-shirt. And when talking to Travis, he was like, yeah man, when the jumpers and stuff come out, we'll send you one and you can buy one. And it's almost been, I'm 26 now, it's been 9 years and I still haven't cashed in on that opportunity. But yeah, short, random thing. Shout out to Travis and the Adelaide community, Harry Sutton and all that other stuff. That was good. So you were saying, du war zum Beispiel, lass uns in Deutsch versuchen wieder, ne? Du war in Adelaide und du hast gesagt, du war fast die ganze Zeit da oder in Melbourne zum Beispiel. Wie lange war du in Adelaide nochmal?
6 Wochen.
Einfach 6 Wochen, okay, cool. 6 Wochen. Und du hast die ganze Zeit gearbeitet mit der Point A, ne?
Ja, und als Kellner, aber das war scheiße.
So, meine Frage ist, dass zum Beispiel, du warst da vor fast 1 Jahr, du hast in Melbourne gewohnt und sie getroffen. Hattest du in Sydney gegangen oder were you in Sydney at all?
Ja, ich war auch, aber ich war nur 1 Woche in Sydney, wirklich nur Sightseeing. Ja, so als Tourist.
Niemand von der Parkour-Community getroffen?
Nein, Dom war sogar zur selben Zeit auch in Sydney, aber ich habe es einfach verpasst.
Interessant. Ja, ehrlich, wenn ich war auch, so wie gesagt, ich war in Sydney, meine Family wohnt in Sydney und wenn ich da war, ich habe die erste Mal mit Dom getroffen. Ihr wohnt mit Marks. He lived with Marks, who was a friend of his, who's still quite a big name in the Sydney Community. Und ehrlich, ich merke das, wenn ich habe, das war vor er war in Fahrrang oder so. Kurz vor Fahrrang. Es war nur ein paar Monate vor er war in Fahrrang. But I remember talking to him. Und ich habe tips gefragt, right? I was like asking him for tips, and I was like, what kind of tips can I give you? Like, can you give me? And literally the only thing he said was just go faster, go harder. And I was like, okay, cool. And actually it fully was right, because at the time I was holding back on my power quite a lot, simply because I was scared. So it was really interesting seeing Dom pre-Farang. And I gotta say, I have so much respect for Dom, really, simply because he has not changed at all. He was genuinely the exact same person before Farang and before all this fame as he is now, like straight up. And I really remember that, meeting him at that time and being like, wow, this guy's mental. And when I chatted to him afterwards, when he came Farang, and I started talking to him to be like, yo, that's sick. All he said to me is literally all he did is start filming more. He didn't do anything. He hasn't changed the way he trained. He was always training like that. He simply was just like, I started filming it more and putting myself more out there. And now he's the Dom that we see today. So sorry, I'm the biggest fanboy of everything parkour. So I just wanted to.
I actually enjoy listening to that.
Yeah, man. And he was a bin man at that time as well, dude. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
I know. Yeah, how crazy is that?
his way of making money was being a bin man. Him and Marks would be a bin man till like 6 in the morning till 12, and then just they could train the rest of the day. Fantastic. So, wer war in deiner Story? Du war wohnen in Australia und du war in Australia. Du war da für ein Jahr. Ich habe schon das gesagt, ist nur das, ich merke das. Warum war du nur für ein Jahr dahin, weißt du? War der ein Grund, dass du zurückgekommen, oder?
Ja, also das Visum ist abgelaufen, einmal. Und zweitens, ich dachte, ich studiere danach weiter. Und ich habe mich beworben für einen Master in Wirtschaft und wurde abgelehnt. Und dann musste ich trotzdem zurück, weil mein Visum eben ausgelaufen war. Und zum Glück habe ich mich dann entschieden, nur noch Parkour zu machen, und das hat funktioniert.
Ja, das ist cool, dass du danach Australia entscheiden, Parkour so richtig. I'm just gonna switch my camera on real quick to see how I said that. Richtig Parkour zu machen. Einfach weil, ja, wenn ich war in Australia, ich hatte auch die gleiche Erfahrung, dass der war eine richtig starke Erfahrung mit der Parkour-Gemeinschaft. Das sagt zu mir, okay, dann ich wollte ein Schauspieler zu sein, aber Parkour gibt mir mehr Werte, und das ist auch Australia war die Zeit, dass ich habe auch gedacht, yo, ich wollte das mehr professional zu machen. So, what was the thing what do you mean by you want to do it properly? Or not properly, but do you know what I mean? Like, what was the change from you being like, okay, this is something I do for fun, to something that you could do?
I feel parkour has always been in my head and heart. As cliche as it sounds, I always knew this is all I wanted to do. I think it's the same story for anybody you ask. It's like, how did you start? And I was like, I saw it and I knew this is what I had to do, kind of. I was like, this is what I've been waiting for all my life. This is a thing, and this is what I want to do. But society tells you that you can't do that, and you can't do it forever. And I kind of gave in on that a little bit when I started studying psychology, and I thought, well, play it safe, kind of get an education, stuff like that. But parkour has always been in my mind. I think the turning point was when I didn't get into that degree which I wanted, which was business. So I thought I'm going to become a manager or whatnot, and make quite good money, and then start a family. And so when I couldn't do that, I had this kind of year in Germany where I didn't have to do anything. And I thought, well, go look for an internship or a nice job and do that and set myself up for next year when I can actually get in.
Yeah.
And I looked at all the vacancies, and it's true. and I thought, like, anything I looked at, I was like marketer, manager. I looked at the description, at the job description. I was like, that's bullshit. I don't want to do that. That's boring. But literally anything I looked at, like for a month or so.
No, it's
And
okay.
I thought, well, maybe the job isn't for you if everything sucks. Because I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And I thought, what would get me excited? And I was like, well, jobs in parkour get me excited. Parkour gets me excited every day.
Yeah.
I'm still excited to go out and train, do jumps, or see people do jumps, or teach people do jumps. Is something I'm always passionate about. It doesn't matter. Like, you know, that question where like, what would make you get up at 6 or 4 a.m. on a Sunday?
Yeah.
You know, on your own. I've literally done that just a couple of months ago. I woke up 4 a.m., walked to the fucking train station because there's no trains that early in the morning to catch the first train to go to another city to a jam.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID in summer. So when that was still a thing. And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe I should just try and do that. I've got a year. Like, I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to be. I've got loads of time. Might as well just do something I really enjoy rather than working a shitty job in, you know, retail or whatnot. And then, so I still had day jobs, which was good because I didn't have the pressure to make something out of it right away.
Yeah.
But actually, I was lucky enough to kind of have, because the minute I decided that, I reached out to people because many people still know me and I've got loads of experience teaching anyway. It was very easy for me to actually get the jobs and make money from it. And eventually I got accepted to do my master's degree in sports science, which has led me to be where I'm at now.
So I have a question about that. What made you do a master's in sports science specifically? Simply because I asked this, I see a lot of kind of parkour people go down that route, and they want to teach, or they want to go like the sports science route, and I have a very kind of similar story, as it were, or similar. I feel like we have a very similar kind of Entscheidung. So machen, weißt du, is that's where, what do we do and how do we make this a job, and what is a parkour coach, and all this other kind of questions. But my question is why did you personally decide to go down uni and sports science degree in order to help you? What will that help you with your parkour?
I'm not sure it will. It's just something I was always interested in, and I feel it's good to understand the underlying principles of sports whenever you act as a teacher. It's just something well, first of all, personal interest. Second of all, it's a safety net. Third, it gives me 2 more years to figure this out and make this a living, or make, you know, more out of it and build it. So that's very nice. I feel the way I'm going now, I feel it gives me the chance to do proper research on parkour, which just hasn't been done because the sport is so young. I feel it has huge potential, and I feel the more areas of the sport we explore and get into, the more we will be recognized as an official sport, and the more opportunities will arise for all of us. So I think
interesting. I agree. Carry on.
I think once people realize what the sport consists of, and that is an actual discipline and something to master, we'll hopefully have a little bit of more audience, a little bit more money, more opportunities for everyone. And I think it would be the coolest thing if we could provide jobs for everyone in the community, and everybody could just do parkour one way or another.
Nice. I agree with what you said. I want to ask a few things simply because how do I put this? Some of the questions that I have about what you just mentioned is, can people see me? Hold on one sec. I have a feeling that
I can't see you.
You suddenly can't see me. Fantastic. So I'm going to quickly talk to you while am I? I just deleted the other iPad that I have because I think I could hear myself talking. So I'm just going to put it down on very quiet.
Well, now I see you at least. Oh, there we go.
Okay. So if I do this, Replace spotlight. Anyway, so I have a question, because some of the things that you're mentioning, and I hope it's okay that I bring these questions up, but when you say parkour not being recognized as an official sport, parkour has been recognized by an official sport by a number of different countries. I think that, for example, Sweden, I could be wrong, but I think that some places in South America it's been recognized as an official sport. I know that in the UK, parkour is finally recognized as the official sport. Finland or Sweden, somewhere in Scandinavia, it's been recognized as an official sport. So what benefits for you do you see by parkour being recognized as an official sport, and what kind of thing, what do you see as the benefits of us being recognized as an official sport, and also potentially what kind of drawbacks do you see of that?
Several things. So I think it's more positive than negative being recognized as a sport. One being, the more attention there is, the more opportunities there are for the sport. ED parks coming up, gyms opening up for the general parkour practitioner, stuff like that. Maybe even clubs. I'm not sure we need them, but it's nice to have them because they, at least in Germany, give you the opportunity to rent out gyms and stuff like that. I also probably haven't phrased that right, because people do realize it's a sport, but I feel the general public only started knowing about parkour a couple of years ago, and we're still gaining momentum with that. And I feel the more people that realize this is a thing, and this is a sport, this is something we do, the more accepted it will be. Kind of in the same way like skating. If you wouldn't know what skaters were doing, you think, get off my property. I don't want to hear. But once people understand that, you know, we're not trying to hurt ourselves, we're not being crazy, we won't be kicked off as much, we'll be granted more access to the facilities that are needed. So I feel the public knowing about the sport that exists, that it is to be taken seriously too, will help us being recognized more and not being, you know, weird guy jumping over walls anymore, but somebody who's actually doing sports, kind of like gymnasts, hard stretch, but
okay,
I hope you get the idea.
No, I do get the idea. It's just I feel kind of bad about coming up with these questions, because a lot of what you're saying is definitely thoughts that I've thought about as well, but I've kind of come out of it with a perspective in a way that doesn't necessarily counter that, but there's a lot of elements that I see that there's gaps in it. And what I mean by that is, for example, skateboarding has been around for longer than parkour has, and yet it's still not accepted as openly by society in a way. Do you know what I mean? I was skating just the other day and I got some weird looks from just people. So, and these are the skateboarding is a sport that's in the Olympics now. Do you know what I mean? So with something like that, I question a little bit what being recognized as a sport actually brings. I totally agree with you that it does bring a kind of recognizable side to it. Do you know what I mean? People will be more validated, clubs will be able to do this and all the other thing. But I also think that, for example, there's an argument in my mind, and I just might be an opinionated prick, but there's an argument in my mind that parkour isn't even a sport in the classic sense of let's say football or organized team sports. There's a fantastic word in Danish which I'm trying to champion called idræt. It's probably not pronounced like that, but Danish people, my bad if I'm doing that wrong, but it's called idræt, and it's a concept of it's exercise for recreation, and it's specifically different from sport, whereas sport is a thing. I don't want to go into the definition of sport is at the minute, but you can if you want to. People at home, go and look up these two terms and write in the comments below what you think about it. But for me, it's I feel as though a lot of the ways that we try to validate our sport is to try and put our sport into structures that have already existed. Do you know what I mean by that? By being like, okay, parkour is this, and I think that actually, and again, this was a conversation I had with Ed Scott last week about, is gymnastics really a good reflection of parkour, in a way that, for example, in parkour we often have just groups of the most authentic parkour or natural parkour is just a group of friends going out and jumping on things.
I agree 100%.
in a lot of the conversations, and me as a coach, and I'm sure you as a coach as well, have often gone down the line of, well, is teaching parkour really parkour? Because it's not necessarily reflective of what it is. Now, I disagree with that, but my point is do you see potential limitations of making parkour too defined in terms of how it will then affect, for example, the average street person, or I don't want to say average street person, but let's say you're the average 15-year-old, you're out there training, you're not really associated with a club and things like that, and then suddenly, I have an example of this, which I'll wait until you've responded to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely valid point. It's actually good that you bring it up. Yes, I do agree. Parkour belongs to the street. Parkour belongs outside, and it's what we should do. And the end goal should always be to have responsible practitioners that go out and do their thing, because it's a free sport. And that I totally agree with you. I don't want regulations like we have in gymnastics, where there's a right or wrong, because that's not inherent to the sport or the practice of parkour. To refrain from calling it a sport there. That being said, the way I see it, I just want the most opportunity out of the field or the practice of parkour. As of now, there's not much you can do with it to make a living yet, and I'd be ready to give up parts here and there, which we need to figure out on the way. So I definitely don't want people only training in gyms, just being inside, having their coach, and once they say, this is good, you're at this level, this is where you're at. So I don't want that. But such systems do give a lot of opportunity for making money and are very easily accessible for people outside of the sport. And because parkour has given me pretty much everything I am and made me the person that I am right now and changed me for the better, I kind of want to enable more people to get into that, because 10, 12 years ago when I started, it was really hard because you had to go out, you were probably on your own, there was no one else to do it. It was seen as kind of wacky, jumping on walls and stuff. I feel people understand this is a sport, this is a thing, kind of like people do understand skating a little bit better. There's parks. People still might not like skaters and their culture, which I also think is a problem of understanding and communication. But at least they've got places to go, and people, respect the practice, kind of. So
I see what you mean. The story that I want to share is, so I was in Denmark. Now, Denmark is quite a sort of accepting country of a lot of things. So I keep hitting my laptop and it looks like there's an earthquake going on. But I was in Denmark, and as I say, parkour is accepted there, skating is accepted there. But I was skating along with a friend on the street, and basically, as I was skating along, a police car came up beside me. And I was like, what's happening? How you doing? And they're like, you're skating? And I was like, yes. And they're like, you know that there's a park for that? And I was like, yes, there's a park for it. Good. And he's like, yeah, that's where you should be skating. And what I'm trying to say is I totally understand the idea of becoming more validated so that society kind of accepts us. But I think that there's a risk in terms of being too validated or having an idea of society to feel that they know what this is, because street skating is a huge part of skating culture as well. Like there is now different groups of skates of like park people and vert people and street skaters. They are separated, don't get me wrong, but for me, I personally identify with the street aspect of skating, because that's the parkour vision I have, just used in a different way. So for me, it was a really interesting take on what is allowed and what happens when you do finally get accepted by a society and be like, yo, okay, cool, you've accepted it. But it again, it might be different in different countries, but it kind of did this with it, in the sense that yes, skating is allowed, but it's only allowed in this kind of way, in this kind of place, and this kind of thing, which I think goes against a lot of the kind of authenticness and that kind of blurred lines of what is acceptable and what isn't.
Excellent point. Yeah.
So, what do you think on that?
I agree with you, but I think again, what the story you're telling is one of misunderstanding. So, because I know that. So I don't know much about skating, but I know there's different disciplines, right? There's street, there's verse, I think it's called, right? There's like these different things, and they skate at different places.
Yeah.
So I know that, and I've never really skated myself. And I feel the responsibility that comes with becoming bigger, becoming more public, becoming more renowned as a sport would be, and that's our responsibility actually, and that's something we just need to figure out while we're doing it, which is a discussion that kind of naturally comes up, is how are we portraying the sport? And my goal would be to show it in, you know, all parts of parkour, what parkour could be: strength and conditioning, going out, doing jumps, maybe gym. Not really sure about that. I don't see myself as the spokesperson for parkour at all. But I feel that's something we need to take care of. Another example that comes to mind is, I know when the first certifications for coaches came up, all of a sudden people that have coached all their life and brought plenty of experience weren't able to coach anymore because they didn't have the official paper that you needed to buy in order to coach. And that's something I see threatening my practice too, because I don't have many official documents telling people I'm a coach. I've got all the reference, and that has been all right so far. But I've started telling people, if you want me to get this certification, you'll have to pay it, because I'm sure I'll be, you know, I'm appropriately experienced to coaching parkour even without the paper, but if it's a prerequisite to doing it, you will have to pay it. I feel that can be restricting to other people, you know. But then again, in the long run, that's a problem our generation has, because we're kind of in the middle of big organized structures starting to build the things. This is what we need to figure out. Maybe the next generation needs to figure out where's the line between gym training and outside training. How do we, you know, tell the public which is the picture that we portray as a culture? I'm sure there's going to be subcultures and sub scenes in terms of styles, in terms of where they train at. But I hope we'll naturally figure that out along the way. So my mission, what I wish for the sport right now, is to be bigger and to reach its full potential. I think Kieran, Jimmy the Giant, is kind of doing the same. So I'd love to have more opportunity within the sport and then figure out everything else once we're there. But at the moment, we can't even live off parkour on the scale that everybody wished. I feel it's still attainable. So
on that note of and I don't know, like, this is me being a little bit, I haven't eaten today properly, so I'm a bit more feisty than normal.
Go ahead.
I personally don't like this idea that parkour we're not able to make money from it. I don't necessarily think is that true, if I'm fully honest with you. And the reason being is I am very lucky that the people who were I was brought up in the parkour world by, they were already like coaches when I was there. So I'm very, do you know what I mean? Granted,
UK, right?
that was in the UK, yes, but like at the same time, that there wasn't, I know of people who were also doing that in different places. So my perspective is less of the ideas, I don't think there's that much opportunity to just do parkour make money by just doing parkour. In the same way that you can't make money from just running and doing track and field. Do you know what I mean? Like, even in the highest levels of sports, the people who go to the Olympics don't really get paid for going to the Olympics. They work really hard, and more often than not, they pay a shit ton of money to then have the opportunity to go there. And then when they come back, they need to find sponsorships themselves or whatever. So I think the dream that most people have about, I want to do parkour as my job, they don't really have a scope of what that actually means. Now, for me, I was very lucky, as I said, when I was growing up, the idea of being a parkour coach was already a job in my mind, simply because I was looking up to see it. Now, these people who were coaches then, I got to say, aren't necessarily coaches today. There's a few of them that are, and the people who, they've either taken what they loved about teaching and put it into different industries. Chris Grant, who is like our main coach, I call him the granddaddy of parkour in Scotland. He now does youth work, and he's taken everything that he did with his parkour teaching and just applied it to youth work, because actually that fits really well, helping our young people contextualize the way around them, build up this empowerment idea, which we all do. But yeah, there's Scott Houston, for example, that is still a teacher and still a coach, but he's had to branch out his teaching to also include like Movna, and he also went down like a whole bunch of like movement, Ido Portal kind of stuff. So my perspective of making money within parkour, I have been lucky enough that for the last 5 years, I have been full-time employed teaching parkour.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying that that's everyone, and I've had to work very hard to get there, but the hard working that I've had to do to get there isn't so much in the sense of I need to train all the time. It's simply I need to find out ways that are relatable for other people to see value in what I do, for them to then pay me. And I think that sorry?
I agree.
Yeah.
But I feel it's a little bit of an exception still. So there are people like you and me and others that were able to find employment or make enough out of the sport to make a living. And you'll definitely need to find your way. I agree in that 100%. But I feel it's not, or at least in Germany, I've never had the impression that it's attainable for everybody. So if you said you want to become a gymnastics coach, nobody would ever doubt that is a thing. For parkour, I feel we're still far from, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly achievable for everybody everywhere. And that's where I'd like to be at, where we've got, so many opportunities that it's very realistic and not that hard anymore.
Yeah, I from what I'm seeing is there's definitely a change in the community in terms of having that discussion with ourselves and trying to talk about the people who are successful in the parkour world and how they actually make money. I know a lot of, I'm sure you do as well, know a lot of parkour athletes who make absolutely zero money, and yet we assume that they're at the top of their game. And they are physically in the top of their game. They just don't necessarily know how to make money from that. But my point is that I'm trying to make is, yes, obviously I had teaching, which is a separate thing that I have passion for outside of it. I had a conversation with Julian Votzler, who he learned how to do video editing out of his love of making parkour videos, and then he just applied that to an actual job, and now he makes full-time. He's cash. I don't want to say cash money, but you know what I mean. He is full-time. Hello, Robert. He's full-time doing parkour, full-time doing the thing that he loves.
Videography,
and things like that. So for me, I guess my advice, the kind of thing that I'm leading towards is like, yeah, parkour is sick, but I feel as though a lot of the way that we're trying to make money is by marketing just towards the parkour community itself, or trying to turn to the entirety of society and being like, yo, we're valuable. And I think that personally, if you can find something that you're passionate about outside of parkour, as I said, for me, it was teaching, but there are many other opportunities. Business is one of them. Video making is another. I also think, as you said, this idea of cultivating the idea of taking responsibility for our community and figuring out the things that, how do we organize? How do we make jams and make a better experience so that society sees what we're doing? I think that's another thing that you can work at. But essentially, my point is just that it's the scope, it's how we see it. And if we validate each other, so for example, if we are also championing, unterstützen andere Leute und say, yo, das ist sinnvoll for uns. Do you know what I mean? Like being like, yo, this guy's sick because I see the value in him and this is why he does this. Then the rest of the world would be like, all right, cool. So I agree with you in the sense that it wasn't necessarily as attainable, but I don't necessarily think it's because there wasn't a demand for it. I think it's just that us as or for let's say the German community haven't really seen and been like, you know what, this is possible, even though that there were examples around the place that it were. So I think that at end effect, what I'm just trying to say is it is possible to make money from parkour, but it's not the way of just by doing it, by just doing parkour, by just jumping on walls.
At the end of the day, it's probably possible to make money with anything. In Adelaide, I met someone who's actually a fire spinner. So that was his occupation. It was crazy to me. I know he's done other things too. But it's definitely a thing. But I feel and I actually agree. I've never thought about it this way, but you're absolutely right. We need to get behind the people, encourage them to go out and find their way if they really want to do parkour. But then again, maybe we need to be the role models for the next generation and explore how much is possible.
I think that might be a unique. You finish your sentence, sorry?
To get back to my original idea, I feel there's a lot of untapped potential that
Yes.
the sport still has, and in terms of opportunity, in terms of money, in terms of, I mean, what I'm really big about is the personal development. At the end of the day, I tell everyone, I don't really care if you jump that wall, and it probably means nothing to me. But this wall is like a problem, and it means everything to me that you learn how to overcome your fear. And I think we had this conversation before. I think the magic in the sport, then other sports do the same thing, but I feel it's very inherent to the sport of parkour. It's overcoming obstacles, overcoming fear. And I feel once you learn how to utilize that as a tool for your life, I think that's what's kept me going for years and years and years. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing my ideas, probably much more than other people do.
Yeah.
Kind of got lost there. What was your question?
Mate, I'll be honest with you, I always get lost. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about half the time. I think what we were talking about is how do we make money from parkour, and I think what you were kind of indicating is there isn't that many people doing it, and I think that for me, from my perspective, there are individuals doing it, but we're just not talking about it. And at the end of the day, I agree with your point of there needs to be a push in the community to start talking about these things that we take for granted in a way. And teaching and community building is one of those things that I personally think is a huge untapped potential. Mainly because the way in which we organize is very similar to how other groups have organized, but we have learned these values. Like we always talk about, if you talk to somebody who's been doing parkour for 10 years, we've been always talking about these values that parkour has always shown us. It helped bring us up. Do you know what I mean? This kind of idea that it helped make us us. And I think that on one level, yes, but on another level, these were just people randomly making decisions and doing stuff. Do you know what I mean? It was actually the young people, us, who put a lot of the value onto those ideas. We just thought that we were getting it from these OGs that were doing it. Do you know what I mean? But the power lies within us and the ability, the want for us to organize. So in terms of being able to make money with it, is you just need to find something that you do that isn't necessarily parkour, but it allows other people to connect with you and to connect with the parkour. For example, video editing is an easy one to do because it's like, hey, I made a video. The average person can watch a sick video and then they connect with you and they want to make videos like that. Us as teachers, we're good at teaching, therefore we're good at sort of explaining all these kinds of like deeper values and getting kids to especially as you say, how do we get a kid to understand that by you figuring out the problem solving of getting over a wall, how can that then translate to your everyday life? And I think for me, this is something that we all kind of not take for granted, but it's hard to reflect something that we do ourselves. Do you know what I mean? It's hard to represent something that we unconsciously do anyway. It's like having a mirror up against you. It's always trying to look in the mirror to then understand and explain to other people. So with that, I think there's a lot of really untapped potential when we realized that yes, we were a product of our environment. Do you know what I mean? We were brought up in our own communities, we're a product of our environment and the people there, but at one point we got to realize that we are also, the environment is a product of us.
Yeah.
We are at one point, as I said, like I started parkour at 15 and it's only until I'm sitting here now being like, hold on a sec, I'm here now. Do you know what I mean? It's me. And it's like, hold on a sec. So what can you do as the random parkour person to create value in parkour to the people around you? And I think the first step is to valuing how unique it is that I said this in a post of mine recently, like I've met random people in the dirtiest streets in different countries and then suddenly I'm in a TV show with them, all for the same sport that I learned. You know what I mean? So being authentic to who we are as people, I think, is actually the key, rather than trying to get parkour to fit into society in a way. We've completely.
I agree. I'm very glad we're having this conversation. I agree, but I feel it goes both ways. So the more authentic we are and try to represent our sport, but also making it accessible, I feel, because I feel that's something I want to share with everyone.
Is parkour not accessible?
I'm not sure it is to everyone, because just a couple of years ago, people asked me, like, how did you learn that? I'm like, well, it's right there on the video. What are you talking about? But I feel some people just, want to be taught, want gyms and stuff like that. And I feel they're a great first touching point with the sport. And then we can hopefully bring them out and integrate them into the wider community, which is, going outside, traveling, making videos and stuff like that.
Yeah. Robert Schnehill has made quite a good point, where it's basically we need to create value within parkour in order to continue to making a living from it. I agree.
I agree too.
I think that at the end, this is kind of my point, and this is, I'm going to switch you to, unfortunately, see my face. I think this is a point, and this is the whole reason why I wanted to do these talks, and which is why I've started to phone people up and just have these discussions, is simply that if we understood how flimsy and how made up of just random individuals our community is, the more we will see that we have the power to talk about it. And yes, we might be having this discussion, and people might know Robin, and people, I don't know if people know me, but the point is just because we're the ones talking about it doesn't mean that your voice at home, or you training random points by yourself in your hometown, that doesn't mean that you have less of a voice than us. And I think that yep, go on.
I want to add something and hone in on that. Every one of us makes a difference, and Callum and me and everyone else, Jason, Paul, Dominic Di Tommaso, we've all been people jumping around on walls out of pure enjoyment and passion, and eventually we're apparently creating value, apparently doing our part of shaping the culture, and everyone else can do the same thing.
Yeah, but I think that the difference, and this is kind of what Robert is kind of touching on, is the fact that in order for us to create that value, we need to see it in ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think that if I'm honest, listening to, I've been on this, I have never shut up about parkour since the minute that I have started it, and it's led me to saying statements that aren't necessarily I disagree with now, but having this discussion is something I really enjoy. What is parkour? Is parkour even a real thing? Just so us to explore this idea of what is this element to parkour that none of us can really say in words. Do you know what I mean? We all kind of say, oh, parkour is a bit different and it's made me and it's done this, but we're all kind of, it's hard for us to then say what that is in a way that is clear. So I think the step for us, again, we're kind of talking about money and things like that, but the step in order for us to recognize our values, we need to have conversations about what our values are. And not just take them for granted. Do you know what I mean? And not just be like, oh yeah, parkour's shit hot because, these guys can do these crazy things. And because if you look at these guys, if you look at, for example, Joe Scandrick, taking him as an example just now, and he recently did a mad descent down some drain pipe on a building.
Yeah, I know which one you mean, yeah.
And if I was the average person, I would look at that and go, man, that boy has no fear. Do you know what I mean? Oh no, like that, or he has we have no fear, or yeah, like you must be really, really good. Whereas I know that he still has fear. So the idea that of taking the outside observer and being like, oh, he has no fear. And then for us to be like, yeah, us as a community, I know parkour people that look in Joe and be like, oh man, he has no fear. But we're not reflecting on ourselves. Whenever we do a jump that other people think is mad, the fear is still there. And I think that if we could change the idea of like his physical ability is what's crazy, and more understand that it's actually his ability to go against or build, kind of what Ed Scott was talking about last week, about this idea of building on our experiences, accepting fear, and really valuing what it is that we do. Like I would like to say that parkour is unique in a sense, in the sense that we actively go out there to make ourselves scared. And there are other, as you say, other sports that do that, but we go out there we go out there to push our fear and to challenge that idea of what we're able to do. And I think that is one small thing that can be applied to everyday life.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree with that. I always, as I say, I always try to, whenever I teach or whenever I talk about the sport, make people understand that there's more to it than the jump, that probably the biggest challenge that you overcome is your own fear in your own mind. And I definitely agree that.
And you can also, as a coach, you can also completely talk about that and in practice not do it. Do you know what I mean? And this is the duality that I talked about kind of last week, is just this idea of you can totally be of two completely different opinions at once. Do you know what I mean? Practice what you preach to an extent, but at the same time also be honest with yourself. You're just a human. You can't always do this. You can't always physically represent. Robert has also said creating value by creating an understanding. Yes.
I feel it is a thing. Yeah, I feel you create value because I feel looking at a parkour run in itself is entertaining and fun to watch, and there's value in that too. But that's very short-lived, and I feel the value of the sport lies within people understanding the power of it. As in any other sport, some sports are more entertainment-based, some sports are more self-mastery-based. I'm thinking traditional soccer versus maybe martial arts, which is probably a lot more self-mastery based. And I feel showing people or demonstrating the value that the sport has will create value. So the understanding of the sport in the broader public will hopefully, create value and then opportunities for each individual in there. But we need to have those conversations. Oh, and I also wanted to mention what you said, Cullen, that I feel that conversation is finally coming up with, talks like this, podcasts, stuff like that, ideas being shared around more Discord, because that's something I've really missed after forums have disappeared, because we had these talks already 5 to 10 years ago when forums were still a thing, then Facebook came up, they kind of died, and I feel now it's finally back. And I feel that's really good.
Yeah, I also feel that. I think that kind of bringing back to this idea of what makes value, I really feel as though, and this is kind of counterintuitive in a way, but the more I go into parkour, the more I realize that it's not that special, but it's more, it's special within the realms of sport. But see, when I look at, I'm personally incredibly passionate and about stuff like rebellion, and kind of revolutionaries and this idea of changing the world, because I think that parkour people have this kind of thing. It's the same with skaters and it's the same with hip hop. I mean, we have this kind of, it's called countercultures. It's a way of being against it. So for me, if I'm honest, the more we go into parkour and focus on why is parkour special and what are all these things, the more we miss the point. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And for me, when looking at different groups, especially groups that I personally look into, like, for example, the Black Panther Party, most people have never heard about them. If you don't know about them, look them up. But they were essentially a civil rights groups who united and organized and did social projects like free school meals for children in their community. They were also doing free healthcare for people who had no healthcare. Now, for people who don't know, in America, the healthcare system's mental. So these were fairly radical kind of changes, and they were ran by essentially kids. I'm not saying like kids the ages of 13, 14. I'm talking like 18, 19, 21 or whatever. And these guys were blacklisted by the government to do it. These guys were assassinated for doing this stuff. Granted, they also did have a side of them that was essentially policing police brutality. And the way that they did that is by being a group of mainly black men and women. Actually, no, that's completely wrong. Men, black women, black men in their communities following police officers around with guns. And all they did is make their presence known. They were just like, we're here, we're a safe distance, we're not going to interrupt. But if there's any point I see that in my community, you guys are attacking us, we will not be afraid to step in. Now, why am I talking about that on a parkour thing? I personally believe that parkour and skateboarding, these things are, whether we like it or not, you might personally not train them as this, but they are potentially statements to do with society. You are standing on a wall that most people don't necessarily think you should be standing on.
It's rebellious in a way. I agree with that.
Yeah. There is a rebellious element to it. So when I look at like that, the idea of putting parkour in a box that way kind of shaves off the kind of sharper corners that I really believe that has made parkour such an impact. You know what I mean? It was these rebellious kids just going out on the street and doing stuff that made parkour big. And I think that there's always been, between the two realms of parkour, now this goes into sort of a deep Callum theory, but there's always been two realms. There's been the old school and the new school. The old school guys are the ones that met parkour off the back of the yamakasi and met the theory when they're already kind of young adults, as it were. And then there's the group of people, the students, that just found it out by videos and went out and did it and just sent it and trained and things like that. And I think those two circles are ones that are finding it difficult to kind of do this, simply because of the different kind of mentality that they have. And more often than not, from the, let's say, OG people, I've heard things like, especially when parkour versus free running was around, this idea of, they're not really doing parkour, they're just these free runners, or they're just jumping and doing stuff. And in my mind, it's like, you are devalidating that.
Yeah.
Whereas
it's actually funny that you mentioned that rebellious side, because I remember I always thought that was so gangster about our sport. I was like, I won't do what you tell me. I won't walk your way. Quite literally, I won't accept this obstacle. I'll find my own way to.
And yet, when we take
play
parkour,
with it.
sorry, when we take parkour and put it into a class structure, suddenly you are the coach and they are the kids, and that's something that would never be reflected in the genuine parkour of the street. Which leads us, kind of, because we're now at 5:30. These talks have gone on for longer than that, but if I'm honest, I'm incredibly hungry, so I'm going to try and make it. I'm not going to cut it now. I'm just kind of saying that I've clocked the time, which we're leading towards the kind of idea of what is the big change that you see or we see. I'm going to say you because you are the guest on this chat and people have had enough of my opinions and stuff. But what is it that you see that's going to be changing in the next couple of years that bring parkour? Because in terms of what is it that's going to come?
I feel if we're like it or not, competitions are going to arise. So I think we should own it and make them into our best interests and make them a reflection of the sport that we practice. I think NATC is doing a great job at that, because I feel it is inherent. There is people that want money out of the sport stepping in, sponsors, big players, and we as a community need to get ready for that. I feel parkour still on its rise, so there's going to be more people, more gyms. Well, granted, there's COVID right now, but I hope that's not going to stop the overall development there is, and I hope that there will be more professional jobs within the sport, be it strength coach, parkour coach, whatever, and I hope we'll have a little bit more structure or more opportunities for people that actually want to be very, very professional with the sport to get the best support they need in order to be the best athletes, because I feel there's still loads of potential to expand the skills we have already. I mean, if you compare what the Amakazi did just in the early 90s and what people are doing right now, you'll see the rise within skill. I feel we still have a long way to go, so I'm excited for that too.
Nice. Can I ask you a question, just to be that guy? What do you
I guess that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, right. When you say like more parkour professionals, what do you mean by that?
High-level athletes that represent the sport one way or another. I'm not sure. I think we're going to figure out along the way what that means, but there are prominent figures in the scene already that do several parkour-related jobs, and I hope there's going to be more of them, and I hope the jobs are going to be more exciting.
Would you consider?
I mean, there are a handful of people that almost exclusively are athletes or sell their skill, and I hope there's going to be more people and more opportunity for that.
Would you consider parkour coaches as parkour professionals?
Not as professional athletes, but as professionals within the sport.
Yeah, so my question was kind of to a leading question. You said that you want more opportunities for parkour professionals. And I find this more often than not, there's a lot of parkour coaches out there. I'm going to switch to me just because I'm talking. I find that there's a lot of parkour coaches out there that whenever I talk to them about this and I say, yo, do you count yourself as a parkour professional? They're like, no. And I'm like, why? And so, because I'm not an athlete. And I think this is something that really holds the community back, is this idea of only seeing a certain type of athlete. If you do parkour all the time and that's what you make your money from, then you are the athlete. If you only teach, you're not a professional. And I think that's very narrow-minded, simply because it is with these kinds of professionals that we're only ever going to get the validation. It's only when we see ourselves being like, yeah, this idea of just coaches are.
I spoke to people, and whenever, because I don't perceive myself to be professional. I think I do professional work whenever I do it, but I would never tell them I'm a parkour professional. But whenever I told people I make money off the sport, they're like, oh, so you're a pro.
Yeah, because this is a thing, sorry, just to kind of make this point, because this is something that came up for me a long time ago when I started to ask this. Because, yeah, as I said, I don't even know if this is the microphone, to be fair.
Yeah, no, it works.
whenever, like, this is the thing, as I said, like, when people say, oh, I'm not a professional, what does professional mean? Let's break down what professional means. You get paid for it. That's all it means. Point.
Yep.
So that if you have done one gig and got paid for it, you're a parkour professional. I'm not saying that you're a full-time parkour professional. I'm not saying that you can go about and like I don't know, brag about it. But at the end of the day, you are a parkour professional, regardless of whether or not you're an amazing athlete, as it were, or whatever. If you've been paid for it, you're a parkour professional.
I actually really like that idea, because if somebody makes a living out of, playing the guitar or something, you just call them musicians or artists if they're selling art. And I actually really like that definition, because with an artist, there's different skills, and one can be a better artist than another. But at the end of the day, if they're making their money from their art, they're all considered professional artists.
Yeah.
And one are more successful, one might be more successful than the other, but they're all artists. I actually really like that.
So, I mean, this is why I say I think too much, because it's things like this that I've sat there and thought. Because the thing is if we're talking about the value in our community, how can we make valuable contributions to society if we're not actually turning around and saying, I value these people? Do you know what I mean? The community doesn't need lots and lots of athletes. Yes, we need athletes, don't get me wrong, but we also need the people who are good at teaching. We need to get the people who are good at organizing. We also need to get the people who are able to bring people together. That is what a community is. A community is different roles. Not everybody is good at being a coach. Not every athlete who can be really good at parkour necessarily is good at teaching. Do you know what I mean? Not every single
100%.
teacher might not be able to do the biggest stuff in parkour. The quality of the teaching is another completely conversation. But my point is just the guy who does the video editing might not be the best at doing parkour business. So this is for me the kind of change that I see that needs to begin is when we start opening up this idea of what does it mean to be a parkour professional, and is it just the people doing parkour for jumping on walls and making a living, that's the parkour professional, or is it more than that? Because when you look at, for example, professional footballers, they're not professional footballers just because they're really good at that. They're professional footballers because there are coaches out there, there's a manager out there, there are teams out there, there are millions of youth groups with lots of these free volunteer coaches teaching them. Do you know what I mean? There's programs there, and if those aren't valued, they wouldn't get there. Like you can see it, like there's lots of programs that go into specifically like poorer places and teach things and go in there and teach them, and a lot of those kids, not a lot of them, but some of those kids then go off to be professional footballers. If they didn't have the experience and the encouragement from those individuals and their community members, they wouldn't have been able to stay straight and on target. So I feel as though our answers kind of go in together, if you know what I mean. Like we're both talking on the same thing. But
I'm actually glad we had that, because I agree 100%. I think I'm going to change how I communicate with people outside and inside of the sport from today, and actually get that point out, because I think it's very important.
And I think
I've never said it in such a direct way. So thanks for putting it out. I think that's a very important point.
No, it's okay. I think because at the end of the day, man, like I've been in this game I've been training for 10, 11 years, and I started teaching only 2 years. So I've been in this game for almost like nine years.
Which is almost the same time for both of us, actually. Yeah. It's crazy.
And I think for me, the longer I get into it, the more confident I get in our culture and not wanting to change it. Do you know what I mean? And to encourage it, and not just to be like, oh yeah, maybe you shouldn't do that because that's not the way, but to be like, no, you're doing this. As long as you can tell me why this relates back to parkour and the values that we all agree on, then you do it your way. And I think that's the more we get confidence and the more we talk about and create the value. Do you know what I mean? Yes, we can just be jumping on walls, but again, if we can create the value and say that it helps us learn mental barriers, it helps us Gemeinschaft training, to bring it kind of back into the German language. Gemeinschaft is another word that I like to use the German version of and not the English, because the English one doesn't encompass everything. Gemeinschaft means community in a loose frame, but also it means togetherness and this feeling of uniting, this feeling of we are one. So Gemeinschaft is something that I now use in my parkour teaching, even in English, to explain what I mean by this togetherness. And it's only by for example, just as a kind of, how does that turn into practice? I'm on a rant right now, but how do we apply that? And it's simply by by giving each other the value. If we're only looking at ourselves, we can't look at ourselves and find out our own value. You can, but it's a harder way. But if the people in your group, let's say you and your friends, are constantly being like, yo, Robin, I like what you do because this is what you're good at. You get people to come and you train and you're good at this. And you're like, okay, Callum, that's sick, G. But you know what? I think you're good at this for this reason and this, that, and the next thing. And we get used to Unterstützen. The idea of Unterstützen is the idea Unterstützen, literally holding each other up.
Yeah.
And then for people who have no idea what it is that we do, they'll come in and be like, yo, these guys know each other. They know what they're doing. And they're just focusing on the good stuff. That is more powerful, I believe, than trying to find a way to talk to the average parent about why their 8-year-old kid should come into parkour. If they see it in front of them and they hear it in our voices, people will separate their hands with money if they see that value. But if we don't see it ourselves and we're not unterstützen, we're not helping and supporting ourselves to see that value, how do you expect the community to grow? Boom. Sorry, I'll shush now.
Boom. I think it's growing at a pretty good rate without that, but I 100% agree we should do that. I've just never thought about it this way. Because I feel there is a huge interest in the sport anyway. People are coming in. At the end of the day, I feel it's about how we communicate and do that Unterstützung that you've just mentioned. I think I've never put it in these ways, but that's kind of my goal whenever I, teach or hang out with people, or especially newcomers to the sport. Apparently, I'm good with that. Introducing them to this idea of overcoming the obstacles and getting to learn themselves probably too, because that's what I really like about the sport too. It's about you and your strength. Because I always tell people, if that's the easiest and right way for you to deal with this obstacle, who am I to tell you it's wrong? And that probably translates back to what you said earlier, finding your own value and finding out what your strengths are.
And understanding that in a community, if we were all the same role, it wouldn't be a community. Do you know what I mean? Find your own path. Find what it is what is unique to you. Do you know what I mean? If we all wanted to be that coach, then we would just be a community of coaches. And then what are we? We're just a group of coaches. We're not even representing the community itself. Robert has one question, which I think will be interesting, is do you think you can bring the idea of Gemeinschaft into competitions? What do you think on that, Herr Robin?
I think, yes, I think that's perfectly possible. I don't think it's a huge topic on its own. I'm not necessarily want to go into all the pros and cons of competition. I'm more of a realist. I feel it is something that's arising already. And obviously it has its downfalls too, but I feel a competition doesn't need to necessarily facilitate rivalry in that way. I feel we can have a little competition, or when you have challenges and you challenge each other at a jam, it might not be that different. And if we, Callum, say if we're jamming together and we play a game of sticks, it's not about finding out who's best. One of us is going to win because it's a game and that's the rules of it. That's how a competition works. But at the end of the day, we're still friends, and we're still, or the way I see it, overcoming challenges together, and we're pushing ourselves to be our best version. That's how I like to see it. So I feel competitions can still have that spirit, and I feel I haven't really competed, but I've been to this very, very small, fun competition with friends. What I experienced was we would root for each other every try at the skill. We were like, this time you're going to get it. Come on, mate.
Yeah.
Go get it. I wouldn't even pay attention to the score. I ended up podium.
Yeah.
But that's not the important part of the thing. What I loved is everybody came out from Melbourne, took a 1-hour train ride, which is ridiculous in Australia. It was ridiculously far away from where we lived. And we'd go there, which is actually quite nice, and then sleep at the people's place that were living in Bendigo. So we were at their house. I think it was 6 of us at their house, and it was 2 of them. And we had the funnest 2 days, and it was actually my birthday too, so that was pretty cool.
Nice.
I had a little celebration with people I wouldn't even know the day before I went there. And I'd say that is Gemeinschaft, because I'm as far from home as I could possibly be quite literally,
Yeah.
if you look at the distance between Germany and Australia. I go to a parkour event, which is supposed to be a competition. I meet people there, and I consider all of them my friends still, and we still talk, not as often, but we still talk, and had a great time. And yes, there was a podium and there was a competition, but for me, it was still community. So yeah, I think 100% we can have both.
Nice. I'm going to just weigh in my opinion, because that's also the reason why it's not called an interview and called Chats with Callum, because you've unfortunately got to deal with what this guy has to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
So basically, yeah, I fully agree. I think that it's Gemeinschaft, this idea of togetherness, is something that definitely can happen within competition, because unspoken competition happens anyway. I can only speak on the perspective of being a young dude in parkour, but being a young dude in parkour, especially one that, let's say you're doing well in parkour, you're training, and suddenly this guy out of nowhere, and it usually is guy, out of nowhere, comes in, and then you're like, who is this guy? Why is he doing this? Oh, he's good at this. Oh, fuck, I want to be good at that. Oh, why? Do you know what I mean? Like, the internal monologue that you have with other people, regardless if you're in a competition or not, is still competitive. Even if that person then becomes your friend and things like that, it then becomes a friendly competition. But that competitiveness isn't really addressed in, they're not really acknowledged, I find, in a lot of the circles that preach and say, oh, parkour's not competition, and yet competitional mindsets still happen due to the society that we're in anyway.
I also feel a good sense of competitiveness is very healthy for your growth. If you're happy where you are and you're constantly happy with it, you're not going to change for the better. So you need to have a certain drive, and that comes, and that unquestionably also comes from comparing, in the best case scenario, probably your own potential, your own future potential, but also where you're at compared to other people. Be inspired by that and be encouraged to go for it.
No, I agree. I think also there's a bit of what's unique about us is in the sense that, yeah, we are then competitive with our friends. And I think that being friends first is the key to all of this. Do you know what I mean? And we need to actively be talking about this in our classes, to our students, to the practitioners or whatever, and be like, yeah, we do competitions, but as you say, you're rooting for your friends. They're still your friends. Yes,
how do you feel about those like showcase rivalries? Because I think Tom Taylor said it on Swapping Shoes, but he was like, well, we can have show fights too, like MMA does. And I actually like that idea where you go, say, we both went to a parkour competition, so we make fun of each other and kind of attack each other on social media just for entertainment's sake. At the end of the day, we're friends.
I mean, I think that is a very dangerous road to go down if it is not explicitly said that this is a joke. I understand this concept of, for example, in fighting, there is a mental aspect of it. You are mentally against the competitor, and when you look at people like Conor McGregor and even Muhammad Ali, do you know what I mean? Like they do some really good shit talking, and yes, that makes money. Yes, that creates hype, and people are like, yeah. But also, I've seen how people who aren't part of the sport and don't have the understanding of this can get really deep in this rage, this idea of this other person's a dickhead. So I probably will have this conversation with Tom Taylor at one point, but I personally wouldn't necessarily think that at the stage that parkour is at, it is a necessarily healthy thing to start with. Do you know what I mean? I really don't think that that's, yes, it might create hype and get people excited, but it's not, I don't think at this stage we are mature enough as a community to really hold fast on this idea of like, no, we are friends first.
I haven't thought about it myself. I was just curious about your opinion, honestly.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, as I said, anything is okay within context. You know what I mean? If we had a really healthy community that could, as a community, see that, and when other people see that and go, those guys hate each other, be like, nah, they're mates. This is why we're doing it. We're almost doing it as a parody of the big fights. I kind of get that, but at the same time, until we as a community inside our little group have a consensus over how we feel about parkour, I think things like that will only lead to more people being like, yeah, exactly. Look how negative that is. Do you know what I mean? Because in the people who are in parkour who are anti-competition, they'll just take one look at that and go, that's all of the elements that we don't like about competition. Whereas if we have a community, a conversation with ourselves and be like, we are all friends and we all need to focus on that, with some time, I think that will happen. But again, I don't think communities work like that with one thing. I think people might do that anyway, and they're welcome to do that. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, when it comes to competition in general, I think, yeah, you can have a really nice friendly part of it, but we need to address this fallacy that parkour isn't naturally competition, because we are competitive humans. We are like, that is kind of what we're like. I am somebody who is actually liking parkour due to the lack of competition. But then again, whenever I play games of TIG or whatever, I get fully like, yeah, let's go. Do you know what I mean? You can still be competitive and not be a dick. Do you know what I mean? It's still like that. But I think in order for us to genuinely do that, we need to have a discussion about how that happens. Do you know what I mean? As much as this whole, like, yes, you can experience it, but we need to have a conversation on the meta level of like, okay, cool, let's talk about this. Let's talk about how you can be competitive with your friends. Let's talk. Do you know what I mean? And I think that
I feel it goes back to validating each other. What we said in the beginning. If we get our teams to do that and find the value in each individual and what everybody contributes to the sport, and appreciate every single one of us for what they bring to the sport, because that's something I really like about the sport as well, and we haven't even touched on, is everybody's bringing their own interpretation of the move and their own style and their own movement background to it, and then shape it, and then it becomes something else. That's something I really like about the sport. Parkour a couple of years ago looked nothing like it looks today, and there's several styles, you know, being shaped from people's different backgrounds. One is very fundamentalist, one is very creative, one is very flip based, and because people have all these different backgrounds, bring it to the sport. And I feel if we do that and understand the value in our culture in itself, we can actually have those very community based supporting competitions that don't put the sport in danger of a negative image. But
again, all of this rides on the fact that we as community members need to take responsibility for these things. Do you know what I mean? And not just take them for granted and things like that. And I think that's my answer to my answer personally to Robert's question is like, of course, we just need to take more time in terms of explaining what the competition is and explaining why we're doing it and making sure that everyone understands that, yes, this is a competition at this time in this place, but it's not representative of your ability in general. Do you know what I mean? Just because you haven't competed or just because you don't want to compete doesn't mean that you're not as good as these competitors. Do you know what I mean? And it's that kind of context, because at the end of the day, we need to, for me at least, we're imagining that we're talking to young minds. We're talking to a random like a kid who's on the street who wants to do this. I had this conversation with a coach. Let me explain it in a story real quick. I was talking to a coach who was really like, no, parkour's not competition. Parkour's not this, that, and the next thing. I'm like, okay, cool. What happens if you have a student that comes up to you and says, yo, I want to go into a competition? What do you do? And he's like, well, I won't help them. I'm like, cool. By you not helping them, you are then allowing them to go by themselves into a competitive environment and then take values from that by themselves. Whereas if you as a coach, even though you're against competition personally, you can still support your young person to go off and have that experience and then contextualize those feelings and come out the other end, whether or not they like it or not. But your responsibility to that student is to not put them in a position where they're going to go off by themselves and potentially be alone and have to make it up for themselves in a way. Do you know what I mean? I know obviously, like, what I'm saying is just like, yeah, if they went off by themselves, they could have a really shitty experience or a really good experience, but not feel that they can talk to you about it in a way. And that's the responsibility of a coach, is like, yes, I have my view of parkour, but as a coach, I'm there to represent and reflect all elements of parkour. So although I might not necessarily in my personal training want to go in competition, I'm still going to be there for you as a young parkour person, because that is the experience of parkour. Do you know what I mean? Does that make any sense to you?
Yes. I agree. Yeah.
So
no.
Yeah, I think
I'm not sure how to respond to that, because I agree.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I feel as though that's, yeah, I fully agree that Gemeinschaft is the togetherness aspect of Gemeinschaft is
really, I feel it is really the base of everything. It can be very build the base to every challenge that our sport might face, actually.
Yeah, is that's the thing, is I don't know, I don't really want to keep fucking pushing the point, but it is this idea of self-validation. It's just like, if we're not having these conversations honestly within ourselves without fighting, how can we then have this conversation and talk to people in the outside world? if we all we do is fight with each other. So to me, yeah, this is the thing.
I feel it's getting better though. I feel we had pretty rough fights about parkour and free running. What is what? Athletes parkour. What's the right word? How are we feeling with competition? I actually feel we're on a good path at the moment.
Yeah.
So I feel there's hope, because I remember when people would literally tear each other, like there was so much hatred and people would refuse to train with another and appreciate another person's movement just because they label it differently, and then all that after just more. I don't even want to go into that.
Yeah, right.
I'm actually glad we're over that, and the young generations don't even know about it, which is actually pretty good. Well, in some ways.
No, yeah, I'll agree with you. In some ways, it's good that they don't need to deal with that, but I also think.
But then they don't know who Elon Bucker is. I'm like, what? But
yeah, I mean, there's always going to be that. Yeah, I think there's always going to be that chat of like, what should new people know and what shouldn't new people know? Do they need to know about it? But I think that for me, at this moment, it's more important to know what you think, as you are the Geist, not the Geist German. Du bist der Geist. But I think, but yeah, no man, like we've touched on a lot of topics, and I think that we are on similar wavelengths to certain things. I just think that I am, similar wavelengths. So kind of, leading to the kind of end bit of this thing. I want to ask, we talked about where you see parkour going. I want to ask, what do you see you doing in the next couple of years? Like, you're studying your master's degree. That's quite a big investment in terms of time and stuff like that. But what do you see you doing? Yeah, no, right. What do you see you doing over the next couple of years?
Finishing that degree. I've personally made it a goal to support people that want to be professional in their training, as in they're looking for supporting exercise, they're looking for support on how to structure the training, which is something I enjoy doing, and I hope to become a supervisor of some kind for people that are more active athletes competing or being show athletes, or just for the enjoyment, really want to level up and then facilitate their practice by giving them all my advice and knowledge ready, which is what I'm already doing right now. I've got 2 athletes I'm taking care of, and I kind of supervise their training. I write strength plans for them. So
are you able to say who they are?
Yeah.
Or would you rather not?
But you won't know them. So it's Marcel Haberstock, who's living in Berlin right now, and it's Dennis Cora. Oh, you know Dennis. He's been on catch.
Dennis, as in Kendama Dennis?
No, as in Cora. He was on catch too when. Oh, but on the German one, you weren't on there.
Yeah, I wasn't on the German one.
Oh, he was on he was there the week before you went there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a shame. Yeah, so I've just taken him on, and hopefully I can take care of more people and build a community of people within that realm, for people that are very interested in going about it as a professional sport, doing the supporting exercises, or follow a PhD and do research about parkour, so I can hopefully have more scientifically sound ideas and teaching methodologies for all of us, because I feel a lot of what we're doing is still guessing. We're getting better, but there's not so much proof of what we're doing when it comes to science. So
I think, if I'm honest on that note, I think we look in the wrong places. I feel as though the benefit of parkour is a lot more social science than it is sports science. I know a lot of people who've already got sports PhDs, and they have also, when you look for them, and I'm not saying that they're everywhere, more information would be grand, do you know what I mean? But there are certain levels of research done into how parkour helps with sports and things like that. But I personally believe, as I said before, the uniqueness of parkour is this kind of rebellious aspect, this sort of socialness. And I feel as though if you want to go into that element of it, or let's put it my way, if I had a chance to do a PhD or a research paper on parkour, I would look into the side of things like the social sciences. How has it affected their interaction with socialness and their ability to interact with society, rather than looking into the sports element of it? Because as much as I get that, I don't think that when you start parkour, you look at the sport and be like, wow, I want to jump that far. It's for me, it's the people. Do you know what I mean? For me, it's the people that keeps you there. It's, as you said, it's the fact that you can go 100 miles, like thousands of miles away from home, meet a group of people and feel together with them. It's not the fact that they physically do the same jumps. Now, that's just my opinion. But that is, for me, I would like to see
I think you're probably right. But then again, I love sport and sports science and training theory. So
yeah, of course,
still a field I want to go into.
I'm not trying to discourage you from doing your masters, not at all.
It felt like that. It felt like that a bit, but no, you're right. But it's still something I'm very passionate about. I really like doing. So, yeah, hopefully that, or not worst case, but different scenario, just become a coach, full-time coach again in the near future. It's still pretty open. So I've still got 2 years until I graduate. So
nice.
Plenty of time, and we'll see what happens until then. I'll keep grinding. I'll keep pushing the culture in my ways, and then see where that leads me.
Yeah, I think that's the key is to have confidence in what you do, but also be okay with the fact that what you do might change along the way.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm totally aware of that. It's changed 3 times, Scott, since I decided I want to do it.
No, it's good. I'm getting to the stage where, I mean, me and you can talk for hours. We do it anyway. So
we do that anyway.
we do. We actually do phone up and just have chats. Mainly it's, yeah. I personally feel it's me just being like, but it is a back and forth between us both. Coming to the stage where it is an hour and a half in, I don't really want to make it too much more because I got the feedback that that's usually when people are like, cool, I've kind of had enough. Even though what we could talk about is great stuff. Are there any?
You're very hungry, so.
Huh?
You're hungry, so.
Well, if you want Callum's full honestness, I'm also really hungry, and yet again, I need the toilet. So, and that happened last week as well. So, yo peeps, you want to know why we're ending? It's usually because of that. But before we end, I want to quickly. Yeah, I know, right? I want to quickly ask Robin, are there any sort of final things you want to say in terms of either travel? We didn't even get on to, like, we talked about it a little bit, but maybe another time we can talk about travel and why traveling is such an important part of Parkour, because that was one of our topics and we kind of just didn't address it fully. But are there any final things you want to say is what I'm trying to get to.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, to everybody actually listening to this. Have a look at my Instagram, Robin the Coach, if you want. Reach out if there's anything you want to know. I do specialize in strength and conditioning for parkour, so if you need support with that, just send over a DM.
I'll jump in a little bit I'm going to keep you on because you are the person that people want to see at the minute. Robin the Coach has got a quite unique Instagram look. He does a lot of really nice kind of info bites on many different things that parkour people, especially parkour coaches, kind of talk about. And I think that's the thing that got me kind of like, wow, is you were making infographics for things that I've only ever seen parkour people kind of talk about. And I think that's really unique with your stuff is you've got really nice bite-sized bits of information for parkour people talking about parkour things. And I think that is why I think I like the way that you do stuff, is because in the idea of Jimmy the Giant as well, yes, that's towards the outside audience, but he's only really talking about stuff that interests parkour people and trying to get other people interested in that. So if you are looking for, let's say, parkour problems that, not looking for parkour problems, but if you experience, what I'm trying to say is if you go into Robin's Instagram and look out what he says, a lot of the stuff that he chats about are parkour specific problems and parkour ideas. And I think what's really great about that is, it's just how you've managed to really take some of the more nuanced ideas that I've heard in the coaching world for a long time and just simply pack it onto Insta. I said this to you when I first did it. I was like, the way that you've managed to get your information is insane. You've managed to go out of relatively kind of nowhere, come out and say on a wider scale stuff that I've been trying to communicate for years. So well done with that. I straight up, like, so much
really
respect.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Like I mean, look at me. I'm trying to, this is the best I can do. And I've managed to talk about for an hour and a half. I don't know how you managed to get your information to such a short space of time. Do you know what I mean? You did it. You get it down to 3 sentences. I'm like, I need an hour and a half and a fucking PowerPoint presentation to get across what I'm trying to think. Anyway, we are coming to the end. It is it's coming to the end. I hope you guys who are all here had a bit of fun. and enjoyed our chat. I'm sure, as Robin just said, send him a DM. He's definitely up for having chats. I'm lucky enough to be one of the people that he accepts phone calls from, but I'm sure that if you guys chat to him, that's kind of where he's going. And not only will it bring, if I can speak on his behalf, a lot of good information for him, but also, no, that came out wrong. As much as it'll bring a lot of good information for you, I'm sure the experience of you talking to Robin will also bring a lot of value to him as well. So don't be afraid to randomly message him, because I'm doing it and he answers to me. So I'm sure you're a lot nicer than I am sometimes. Anyway, thank you so much, Robin, for...
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No worries. I'm really happy. For everyone at home, Robin, I called him last week to ask him to do this because we found a week that we didn't have anyone. So Robin, again, thank you for coming in so short notice.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
I also realized, sorry to everyone who doesn't speak German, it will come again. I would really like to start this idea of trying to have discussions like this in 2 languages, because I do think it would make it inclusive. It might be a bit hard to understand, but I don't mind that. For those of you who are at home wondering who we have next week, we have a very special guest next week, someone that I'm really happy is here. You mentioned him earlier. Herr Daniel Abaka will be talking to... Yes. Oh, can you just do that face real quick?
Yeah, no, what?
I wish I changed that. Yeah, so basically Daniel Abaka is coming in next week. He's going to be talking to myself and the king himself, Bata Prog. He will be coming in, and I think Bata and I will probably be having Bata will be talking to him. I will also be there. You know that. Add all that together, we're going to have a great chat. So yes, Daniel Abaka next week. Robin, if you're interested, jump in.
I will.
Yeah. But until then, from me, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for listening to our random thoughts. Again, thank you, Robin, just again for being here and being part of it. And I'm looking forward to more phone calls with you in the future, and hopefully we can come up with some more topics that maybe in a couple of weeks you can come back on and we can expand on some of these ideas.
Awesome. Looking forward to that already. Calvin, thanks for having me. I'll talk soon.
Yep. You're going to have to deal with it. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone who's here. Thank you, Robert, for being part of it. And I will see you soon. Robin will see you soon. And much love till the next time.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.